Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you, Geshe. Geshe.
Mhm. All right. Shall we start?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. Hi, hello.
Hi. Sure.
Maybe we'll wait.
Sure.
Maybe we'll wait one more minute for
Sure.
people to join.
Let's do that. Okay. Sure. Okay. Could you also post the prayers, Sure?
Yes, of course.
Just we got them ready.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, we're getting there. Well, let's start as usual. What time is it now? 7. Okay. Let's start as usual with a short meditation. We start with breathing, just watching the breath, and then I lead you through generating the right kind of motivation, and that's followed by the prayers. Okay. Now, in order to generate the right kind of motivation, it's important to start off with great compassion. Just a loving attitude that wishes for all sentient beings to be free from any type of suffering. Try to generate that feeling of closeness towards any living being, combined with the thought, may they be free from any type of suffering. May I be able to free them from all their sufferings. And that aspiration then turns into the determination. I will do whatever I can to help sentient beings to remove all their sufferings. How can I accomplish this? If I become a Buddha myself, only then do I have the full capacity to lead other sentient beings out of their suffering. And so generate the thought, may I become fully enlightened for the welfare of all sentient beings. And may the study of the Heart Sutra become one of the causes for my own enlightenment. And then with this motivation, let's recite the prayers. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And then the four immeasurables. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Okay, great. All right, well, we're coming closer to the end of the Heart Sutra. So what we've learned so far, by way of the introductory part, we've been put in the situation of visualizing the place where the Buddha was residing, where many of his followers had come together to receive a teaching on wisdom, that is, on the perfection of wisdom on emptiness. Having come there, being in the presence of these great beings, and then of course the teachings start with Shariputra asking Avalokiteshvara about how to practice wisdom, how to practice emptiness, or what to do with emptiness, how to develop an understanding of emptiness. And in response to that, Avalokiteshvara gave a very extensive explanation. Explicitly, he taught very extensively about emptiness, and implicitly, he spoke about the path, or how to utilize the understanding of emptiness by mentally going through different stages that then culminate or that finalize in the attainment of full enlightenment. So initially, Avalokiteshvara taught about emptiness, of course, explicitly, emptiness by way of saying, in general, phenomena do not exist inherently. They don't exist independently from their own side, although they appear to exist in that way, in this very solid and independent way. That is just like an optical illusion. That's not how things really exist. And our holding on to them existing in such a false way is the root cause of all our troubles, of all our limitations, and so forth. And so he extensively speaks about what it means to be empty of inherent existence, emptiness, not referring to nothingness, but referring to a particular characteristic that just cannot exist and that we falsely perceive. So with regard to the I, very importantly, because we're self-centered, we cherish the I, the self, more than others, out of this misapprehension with regard to any phenomenon, but in particular with regard to the self, to the I. And so to understand the self doesn't exist inherently. Mind and body don't exist inherently. None of their characteristics, none of their qualities exist inherently. There's no inherent coming or going, no inherent positive or negative, increase, decrease, and so forth. And even with regard to our being in samsara, there's no inherent existent person who resides in samsara, who wanders within samsara, etc. So explicitly, it talks about all these different aspects with regard to emptiness, but implicitly, Avalokiteshvara also talks about the fact that there are different levels, as I already mentioned, different levels we move through to get to the enlightened state of a Buddha who has obtained this perfection of wisdom, which is discussed here. And to do so, first, it's important to generate some notion of what emptiness means, some assumption, correct assumption, that's what it is, without realizing, like incontrovertibly understanding what it means. But then that understanding will slowly be generated until we understand what all this is about. So then we have already a mind that realizes emptiness, realizes selflessness, as the first step towards eliminating our ignorance, our misapprehension of reality. But of course, we do so with a certain goal in mind. We want to, with a goal of enlightenment in this case. So understanding that not just we are suffering, not just we are under the control of certain emotions that are actually the troublemaker. They're the actual enemy, if we like, the actual cause for all our troubles. So understanding that not just we are in that situation, but other sentient beings are too. And to generate the wish, myself, may I be free from all these troubles, from all these limitations. May I be free from my afflictive emotions. And likewise, may other sentient beings also be free from all their limitations, etc. So generating great compassion, and eventually the wish to become a fully enlightened Buddha, to work towards the goal of accomplishing our own welfare, and more importantly, the welfare of all sentient beings. So with this mind of bodhicitta, we enter the first level of the Mahayana path. This is implicitly described in the Heart Sutra. And then, having realized emptiness, either before we enter the Mahayana path or after we've entered it with the generation, with the development of bodhicitta, we then need to work on this understanding of emptiness. We need to strengthen it for this understanding to actually eliminate what's extra in our mind, what's not in the nature of our mind, what doesn't belong there, and what is responsible for all our troubles. So how do we do that? We need to, besides the understanding of emptiness, also generate a very deep level of concentration, a type of concentration that allows us for many hours to stay with the object. So we talk about a state of mind called calm abiding, which is described as a type of mind that is able to focus single-pointedly with great clarity on one single object for at least 4 hours. So this is the type of mind we need to develop and then combine it with the understanding of emptiness. In other words, our mind becomes a type of awareness that is described as a union of calm abiding, this deep level of concentration, and special insight. That means insight into emptiness. So this union, bringing together concentration and a realization of emptiness, where the mind single-pointedly focuses on emptiness, that mind, that union is the first moment of the next level, the path of preparation. But that mind is still conceptual. It's still not a direct perception of emptiness. So we need to train, we need to continue to train ourselves in that union of calm abiding and special insight, taking emptiness as the object, and continuously meditating on it again and again and again until this conceptual perception of emptiness turns into a direct experience, until we directly experience emptiness. That is the first moment when we're able to do that for the first time. That's called the path of seeing, which is also implicitly described in the Heart Sutra. And once we experience emptiness directly, we eliminate at least those wrong views, those misapprehensions of reality that were intellectually acquired, that though based on our innate wrong view of reality, but still developed in this lifetime in dependence on philosophy, culture, etc. So intellectually acquired wrong views are eliminated, and also the afflictions that would potentially arise from those intellectually acquired wrong views, which can no longer now arise, well, all of those are eliminated. And then the next step would be to grow more familiar with this direct perception of emptiness. So on the path of seeing, we realize emptiness directly for the first time. And then we have to grow familiar with that direct perception, which the moment we start becoming familiar with it, that's the moment of the path of meditation, growing familiar with the understanding, with the direct perception of emptiness. And that's how far we got. So implicitly, the part of the text that described the path of meditation, that's the part where it says, my text. Oh yes, that's the part where it says, Shariputra, therefore in emptiness there's no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. So basically talking explicitly, of course, of the emptiness, and implicitly speaking of the path of meditation in general, but also describing implicitly what it is that is experienced samsara. What is samsara? Form, feeling, discrimination, composition, and factor, and those don't exist inherently. Then how are we in samsara? Well, it is through consciousness, eye, ear, nose, tongue, etc. So the external phenomena, our sense factors, sense faculties, as well as consciousness, they keep us within samsara. And then how do we wander from life to life? Well, that's described through the 12 links, ignorance, mental fabrication or mental karma, mental formation, that is karma, consciousness, and so forth, as we discussed last time. And then it says that, well, that's explicitly, that's how we're stuck in samsara, how we wander in samsara. And then, of course, there's the extinction of samsara. So explicitly, there's no inherently existent extinction of ignorance. There's no inherently existent extinction, but there is a conventional extinction. So all this is described here. So there's no aging and death, no inherent aging and death, and there's no inherent extinction of aging and death. But implicitly, but conventionally there is aging and death, and there's an extinction of aging and death. And then similarly, there's no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. So there's no exalted wisdom. Explicitly, yes. Explicitly, none of those exist inherently, independently. But conventionally, there's suffering, there's the origin, there's the cause of suffering, and therefore there's conventionally a cessation and there's a path. Conventionally, there's an exalted wisdom that leads to an attainment. So there is no inherently existent wisdom, no inherently existent attainment, and also no inherently existent non-attainment, the state that we're in right now, inherently existent non-attainment. Conventional non-attainment. So none of those things exist inherently, but nonetheless, conventionally they're there, which is why it's possible to free ourselves from what's called samsara. Basically, just what it's saying here. Well, we're in this situation, we're in this mess because of our mind not perceiving things correctly. This is why we suffer. This is why we have problems, doubts, anxieties, and so forth. So our whole messy life with lots of emotions that are so painful, well, they have a root cause. And it's just understanding what it is, understanding emptiness eventually understanding emptiness. And in that way, we can come out of this. We can travel through different stages of the mind, different states of mind that we develop, and attain, and that's the next step, the path of no more learning. So that's the next level, which starts with the word Shaiputra, therefore, because there's no attainment. Okay. So here, actually, the level that is implicitly described is the path of no more learning. The words Shaiputra, therefore, because there's no attainment, and so forth. So up to or from Shaiputra, therefore, in emptiness, there's no form, no feeling, no discrimination, until there's no attainment, also no non-attainment. That implicitly describes the path of meditation. And now the next part is Shaiputra, therefore, because there's no attainment. And though it's the path of no more learning, but the last bit still describes the moment just before attaining enlightenment. So because there's no attainment, no inherently existent attainment, therefore it's possible to become a Buddha. Because if there was inherently existent attainment, it would be solid, unchangeable, nothing could interact with it, and we couldn't become enlightened. But because there's no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. So their mind eventually becomes a mind that's without obscuration and without fear. So those bodhisattvas, they eliminate those obscurations. And that's on the last level on the path of meditation. It's called the 10th ground. With the path of seeing and the path of meditation, they are divided into 10 grounds, 10 levels. We don't need to go into details on them, just that you know that those last two levels, path of seeing and path of meditation, which are before the path of no more learning, they can be subdivided into those 10 levels. And on the last level, bodhisattvas, for the last time, they engage, they enter a meditative state, a meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness, eliminating the subtlest obscuration, and then their minds are without obscuration and, of course, without any type of fear. The subtlest type of fear of any kind of limitation, all that is gone. And then it goes on to say, having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. They reach the highest level of liberation or nirvana. And then it goes on to say, all the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. So those words describe basically the end result of understanding emptiness in reliance on, for instance, the Heart Sutra, and of course then in reliance on meditating, well, contemplating the meaning of the Heart Sutra, and eventually meditating on it. There's two levels. There is a meditative experience that requires effort until that becomes effortless, spontaneous, so the effortless part of the experience. And through this effortless experience, this effortless meditative experience, then a person goes through the different levels, bodhisattva levels, until eventually he or she attains the state of a Buddha. Okay? And so, of course, here, all this being describing the goal as well as the path taking us there, it leads us already in the right direction. Okay, so this part until the last sentence. So all the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment and reliance on the perfection of wisdom. That part is a very extensive explanation of the perfection of wisdom, and we've spent many weeks discussing what is said in there. But there's also a shorter version, which is really the mantra recital, and that is said to be for people with greater mental faculty, which basically is just another way of saying people who are further along on the path. When they hear the following words, they don't need all the explanation that preceded this bit. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. Okay, so that's that part. When it goes on to say, therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, all the way through to the mantra itself, Tayata Gate Gate Paragate, and so forth. That part, that bit, it's also it's sometimes described as the conclusion, but really it's a short. It's kind of summarizing everything that was said earlier on, but it's also described as the part for those who have already a background, who have already good understanding of emptiness. When they hear those words, they get great benefit just from hearing that. They don't require the previous explanation. So they distinguish between those with greater mental ability and the words that were explained before of lesser mental ability, which doesn't mean that's like we have like, if we're not able to understand that, we're not of great mental capacity. It's just the name that is given based or comparing a person who's already more evolved when it comes to the understanding of emptiness, has a better understanding of emptiness than the person who doesn't have that understanding yet. So for one person, for the person who doesn't have a sufficient understanding of emptiness yet, all the previous part had to be explained. But for someone who's already highly evolved, the words of the mantra will be sufficient. Okay. But in general, for most people, having the previous part, the extensive explanation of emptiness, and then later on the conclusion or the summary, both of them are very helpful. So this is one of those very few times where you have a sutra that also has a mantra, because mantras are usually cited as part of Tantra, as verbal expressions, mantra meaning protecting the mind, something that protects the mind. And of course, it doesn't just refer to the words, but it refers to the meaning, it refers to the meditation that is done as part of the mantra recitation, and that protects the mind. Okay, so in the sutric system, you don't have many recitations of mantras, or Mani Padme Hum, yes, that mantra, maybe the Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra, also as a, well, it's part of Tantra, but it's still in a sutric context, it can be recited. But really here, this mantra of Prashna Paramita, Tayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhisattva. So that mantra, it's one of those very few times where you find in a sutric text, you find an actual mantra. Now, before the text recites the mantra, before the mantra is given, it says first, therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. Then it says the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering. So each of those words have a meaning. In some commentaries would say, well, they describe the 5 paths, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the path of accumulation, the mantra of great knowledge, the path of preparation, the unsurpassed mantra, path of seeing, the mantra equal to the unequal, the path of meditation, and the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, that describes the path of no more learning. Other explanations are that the words there from the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, that's just saying the mantra that's following, that follows from here, that is the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. And then it goes on to say the mantra of great knowledge. It says that the wisdom, the perfection of wisdom, this understanding of emptiness, that is able to eliminate, it eliminates the afflictions, the three poisons of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So this is what the words, the mantra of great knowledge means. And then it goes on to say the unsurpassed mantra, those words, according to the commentaries, mean that there's nothing greater than the perfection of wisdom in order to overcome samsara, in order to overcome samsara, as well as avoiding nirvana, as in like not just to be satisfied with being liberated ourselves, which would be the extreme of nirvana, only attaining liberation for ourselves, but instead to attain full enlightenment. So we've talked about extremes before in terms of the goals. Samsara is an extreme. To be in samsara is an extreme situation, but also being in nirvana just for our own sake, that's another extreme. And a bodhisattva would avoid those two by aiming to become fully enlightened Buddha, not to be in samsara, but also not to be just self-liberated, and instead to become a Buddha. And it's said here, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, those words are basically implying that the perfection of wisdom is the best means to overcome the two extremes of nirvana, of samsara and nirvana. And then he goes on to say the mantra equal to the unequaled, that's said because Buddhahood is unequaled. And it is through accomplishing the perfection of wisdom, through obtaining this, we can attain this Buddhahood. And then he goes on to say, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, that is said to mean that the perfection of wisdom removes everything that's in the way to becoming a Buddha. That is the misapprehension of reality plus all its imprints, all the imprints it left on the mind. Okay? And that should be known as truth because it's not false. So the mantra of the perfection of wisdom is therefore declared. And then it goes on to say Tayata Gata Gata. Sometimes it has an Om. Sometimes people say Tayata Om Gata Gata, or sometimes it's Tayata Gata Gata Paragata. So usually it's without the Om, but I've seen it in some texts. So Tayata can stand at the beginning of a mantra, just as Om so often the beginning as an Om Mani Padme Hum. So here Tayata is the first word, if you like, Sanskrit word, and it means so that's the way is. It kind of means that's the way is. And then it goes on to say Gate, which means gone, and another Gate, gone, twice gone. The first Gate refers to the path of accumulation, the second Gate to the path of preparation. Then he goes on to say Paragate, completely gone, or having gone, or having gone beyond, and Parasamgata, totally and completely gone. So it's just an extension. So having gone and having gone further, having totally gone, and then Bodhi is Soha. So Paragata refers to the path of seeing, Parasamgata to the path of meditation, and Bodhi means enlightenment, Buddhahood, enlightenment. Soha means basically Bodhi Soha means being rooted in enlightenment. So in other words, basically these words say, well, this is the way it is. You go through the first state, Gate, through the path of accumulation, then the path of preparation, then the path of seeing, then the path of the path of meditation, and eventually you attain path of normal learning, being rooted in or being stabilized, being rooted in enlightenment. So that's basically what this mantra expresses, with the previous explanation, as I said, implied in those words, the mantras of great knowledge, the Ansubhas mantra, and so forth. I gave that explanation. So that is just the short version of everything we did before. Okay, and I don't think I can add anything. We've been very extensive. I've given a very extensive explanation on, well, emptiness, of course, that was the main topic, but I've also talked about the different paths, the different levels. I could go into more details, of course I could, but it's actually usually more a topic of, well, it's more explained in the context of different topics. So to go into path and grounds and path, I think that would be, yeah, definitely part of a different topic. So I don't think there's any need to go into it, but if at least you understand that there is something to be removed, of course, there are parts of our mind that are known in the nature of our mind that are extra, and they are responsible for all our trouble. And of course, it all comes down to the misapprehension of reality. All right, so this far is Avalokiteshvara kind of giving the explanation. And then there's this last sentence of Avalokiteshvara: Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. So he's really summarizing it once again. That's how Bodhisattvas should practice. And that far, that completes Avalokiteshvara's answer. The very extensive part that we went through earlier on, the shorter part that I basically just raced through, but for the same reason that everything was already mentioned. This is just a shorter version of what was mentioned earlier on. And now, of course, the part that's very important is the Buddha's approval. So basically putting a seal on whatever has been said before, in the sense that, of course, Buddha hasn't talked before, hasn't spoken those words. They were spoken by Avalokiteshvara, but now with the Buddha approving what Avalokiteshvara has said, in that way, now it becomes clear that those are the words. That this is exactly according to the Buddha's wish, the Buddha's intention, or the Buddha's thoughts, Buddha's teachings of the truth itself. So in that way, it becomes Buddha's words. When it says, then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration, of course, he didn't arise from that concentration. He remains within that concentration, but through common appearances, according to what other sentient beings perceived, in the sense that the Buddha was silent all the way through Shariputra's question and Avalokiteshvara's answer. So from the outer experience, it seemed the Buddha was meditating. And so with now the Buddha was talking, showing his approval of what Avalokiteshvara said, according to how it appeared, it was as if he arose from that concentration. So the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commanded, he praised, he commanded the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, well said. So he basically says, actually he says lexo, lexo. He doesn't actually say well said, well said. He said, well, very good, right? So well said, that's really what it means. So it's fine to say that. It just sounds a little better than saying well, or good, or whatever. So really, but it's just lek. So lek is means good, and so it's almost like period. Lek period, good period. It's kind of like at the end of the sentence, the last word of the last letter of the word is a sa, which is a silent sa in Tibetan. You won't hear it from the word lek, although in Ladakh they would say lex, so you could hear it in when they speak Tibetan in areas such as Ladakh and Zanskar, where some of the silent letters are spoken. Then they would say lex, so that means good. And then in order to say, to finish, to kind of finish the word, like kind of to emphasize it, but it could also almost be like a full stop. They say lexo. So lexo, lexo, lexo. He says it twice. Well done, good, good. Okay, so he's saying it twice, and sometimes Maya once asked me about this. We had this part of the Prajnaparamita Sutra, the Pramanavartika, where we talked about words that are redundant, like words that don't need to be said twice. There are repetitive words, and then there are words that, although they're not repetitive in the sense that they're different words, but because they have the same meaning, they would be redundant, right? We had this whole discussion. So if I say twice, I don't know, he's there, he's there. Why do I say it twice? I say he's there, he's there. I don't need to, in most situations, saying it once is enough. Or if I say one thing and I use words that have exactly the same meaning, I say those, it may be redundant. It depends on if there's no need for saying the same thing just in a slightly different way, well, then it would be redundant. So we had all this discussion about certain aspects here that sometimes it is necessary to say things twice or more than twice. Sometimes we can repeat ourselves. And so one example is here in the Heart Sutra. So he said it well said, well said. He's kind of stressing this, that this is that the explanation that Avalokiteshvara gave was really good. And so he says it twice. So it's not redundant. It's not a repetition. It's not redundant as such. Of course, he repeats himself, but there's no fold of repetition. Okay, because it was important to stress that this is beneficial. So there are different explanations. Some say that well said. The first one is that this explanation this explanation of the perfection of wisdom becomes the cause of a person to attain liberation, and the second well said is to become a fully enlightened Buddha. So to remove, the first well said refers to removing afflictive obscuration, the second to removing cognitive obscurations. So there are different ways of interpreting those words, well said, that they're both important. So basically saying son of the lineage, Avalokiteshvara being a child of the lineage, in that having awakened the Buddha nature and having entered the Mahayana path. So they're son of the lineage of the Mahayana lineage. It is like that. It's like that, what he said. It is like that. Again, he repeats it. It's like that. It's like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. So if you do that, even the Tathagatas will also rejoice. They'll be happy. So to me, that's always saying, bringing in rejoicing, bringing in this kind of happiness. Not that he's saying, oh, be all happy, but actually we have good reason to be so happy in that we have these teachings and we have this path that is laid out for us. And I've mentioned this before, that Buddhist teachings should go with a certain degree of joy. And we should make an effort to find this joy in our life. And there's no contradiction to understanding suffering, because it's recognizing suffering and so forth. It's not so much about removing something that's out there. It's more about removing our attitude. So instead of allowing ourselves to be pulled down by a situation, to be disappointed and, oh, everything's so difficult and we want this and we don't get it, and then we're depressed and someone says something, etc. So we often have this tendency to look at things in a way that make us suffer. Of course, there's this misapprehension of reality. That's the underlying root cause. But even without going into that level, a lot of our sufferings are so unnecessary, because, well, it's only because we have expectations. It should be this way. And when we're often very rigid in our responses to things because we want them to be in a certain way, then there's disappointment, there's depression. We feel paralyzed in what we're doing, etc. So there's so much unnecessary suffering because we're too rigid. And this rigidity, this inability to be more flexible, well, that can be brought about through more joy, through more happiness, through more appreciation of the good things in our life, to not automatically focus on what's wrong with our life, but to focus more on what's right in our life, the good parts, the positive aspects. I've once been told, well, biologically, this is just how the human race has evolved. That's something really, that's how, because we've seen always the negative aspects, that's how we could evolve. But that's not a good enough reason that just because, well, maybe in millions of years ago, or when humankind, when it developed at that time, that was helpful. Because the same argument could go, well, then to avoid eating excessive sweets and avoiding our hesitation to do exercise, well, we should also not exercise because we have like a kind of natural dislike to really get going, to move. So if there's like a choice between taking the staircase in the building instead of taking the elevator, we probably choose the elevator before we take the staircase. Well, because in the old days when we lived in caves, etc., we tried to preserve our energy, and we would walk around the tree instead of walking over it, like climb over it. Or we would seek out sweet fruits because they would provide us with more energy. So we would seek out fruits, etc. So biologically, we should therefore give into our craving for sweet, and we should give in our craving to preserve energy. Well, no, we don't do that. Although biologically, that's probably the reason why we have these urges, what have you. So likewise here, we may biologically focus on the negative parts because it helped us to evolve. But, well, the time is up for those times. Now we've fully evolved as human beings, and it's just so important to find more joy in our life. And what a better way to find more joy than to go through everything that's right in our life, to rejoice in the opportunities, in the choices we can make, the opportunities and all the freedoms we have. And even though things are pretty bad right now in this world, yes, they were better before, but were they really? I mean, were they really? Of course, certain things were easier, but we didn't appreciate them when they were there. And we still have a hard time to appreciate the positive, to see also the positive in other people, and of course to see the positive within ourselves, positive in situations, however difficult they are. Blessing in disguise. I mean, we have these sayings to find the blessing in disguise of each situation, to find a way in which we can learn new things. So to find joy, and this is, I think, is always, I'm always reminded of it when he says, and even the Tathagatas will be happy. They will rejoice. They will experience joy. Really, that's what these words express in Tibetan, like expressing this joy. All right. So he's basically finishing off saying, this is how we should apply this. This is what, emptiness is all about. Avalokiteshvara explained it in great detail. He gave a brief explanation based on the mantra, but very extensive ones before in terms of explicit, implicit explanation. And that's exactly how we should apply this. And Buddhas will be happy, and we will attain the state of happiness. And so the last bit then is just saying everyone else now their response now to what Avalokiteshvara said, to what the Buddha said, that they are also pleased, and now they express their praise. They're saying, great, well said. They're also kind of approving of what was said. So it goes on to say, the Bhagavan having thus spoken, the venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed. Oh, there it is again. Were overjoyed, were very joyful, and highly praised that spoken by the Buddha. So they were pleased. Everyone is basically happy about the fact The fact that this incredible teachings, these are the teachings set forth by the Buddha. This is what the Buddha has found to be truth, that there is a way out of our problems, out of our difficulties, and that was just explained by Avalokiteshvara. And that's it. I didn't mean to race through it this way, but honestly, when I prepared it, there isn't much towards the end. There's really just those words, as I just said. I can stretch it a little longer and talk about this, that, and the other, but I'm really just talking about whatever I talked about before. Okay. And I thought it would take me a little longer, but it didn't take me that long. Yeah, that's basically the very end bit, the conclusion, and then the very end with the followers being pleased and everyone being pleased. And as you can probably tell, of course, the sutra contains so much. Although it's very short, it's one of the shortest Perfection of Wisdom sutras. And now, of course, what's so important is to make this relevant. I mean, not just to read it every day, almost like some duty. Yeah, I need to do it. All right, I'll do it and feel better about myself having just read through it. But to now take whatever we've learned, and this is, of course, presented in an unusual way. We just don't talk like that in the 21st century any longer. And also the meaning of what it refers to is unusual. It's not what you find in magazines, in newspapers, and on the news, and in movies, etc. So the things that surround us all day long, the stuff we chat about with friends, etc. And we won't find, unless we're in a Dharma center, we're surrounded by people who practice the Dharma. And even then, people don't talk about this stuff all day long. So it is not really there in front of us all the time. And we need to find a way ourselves to make this matter, to bring this in our own life, to translate these words that I used here, these ancient, sometimes very technical terms, to translate them in a day-to-day language, to bring this into our daily life, into every moment. And of course, the day only has 24 hours. It's not that long after all. But then again, it is really long because besides the time we sleep, okay, that's different. But while we're awake, let it be, I don't know, 16 hours we're awake, there's a lot happening in one day. A lot of thoughts arising, different situations, the ones we like, the ones we don't like. And even if there are only a few situations arise, they keep with us all day long. Someone said something, we keep going over it again and again, thinking about it, reflecting on it, worrying about it, etc. So there may just be a few occasions in one day when things happen, but they keep us busy. And so our thoughts are there the whole time, busy, planning ahead, thinking about what just happened, planning what's going to happen tomorrow. We're hardly ever in the present. And even if we manage to be in the present during a few moments, do we really bring in ideas of emptiness? Do we really bring in ideas of what's described here, Heart Sutra? Of course, compassion is also part of it. Is this part of our own life? Do we actually bring this in? Maybe not in every moment, but at least start our day with this and finish our day with it. That's the very beginning. Start of our day with it, because that already gives us the direction. It's comes like when you start with a good breakfast, your body's well nourished, you got more energy. Well, here it's mental breakfast. It's your practice in the morning, reminding yourself, of course, of compassion. Without compassion, just understanding of emptiness is too dry. So to bring in love, to bring in closeness towards others, even when there are people you don't like, to make an effort to find the good things in that person. And if there's really nothing you can come up with, at least the fact that they have Buddha nature, that they have the same ability that we do, And it's just due to certain causes and conditions, including, of course, their past actions, etc., that these cannot come through. Certain good qualities cannot come through to the same extent as they can come through in other people, but that they suffer the most from whatever restrictions, from whatever negative qualities they have. And just that is reason enough to generate compassion for them. And the wish, of course, to be free from that suffering they have, with a sense of care, sense of closeness. I don't want them to suffer. No one deserves to suffer, including themselves. And they're just harming themselves without knowing that they're doing that. So it's not that hard. It just takes a little bit of effort, especially with the people we have a hard time with. But as Shantideva said, there's nothing that doesn't become easier with familiarity. You do it once, you do it twice, and it gets easier. So that's in terms of love and compassion, but also understanding the situations they arise. They seem so solid, but they only seem solid because they're made solid by our own mind. So not to allow ourselves to be fooled by our mind at all times. The moment a situation arises and we feel, oh, that sucks, that's just horrible, that's terrible, remind yourself, well, it appears that solid, it appears as a problem in and of itself, but it's merely labeled. It's just labeled by our thoughts, thinking this is a horrible situation. You label it. So in and of itself, it's not a horrible situation. It's neither positive nor negative. It's only in relation to what we want, we call it positive or negative. So really, there's no one who can do this for you. I mean, you can have as many Zoom sessions a day, you can fit in, or a week or whatever. There's that far that a person talking about the Dharma, this far they can help you, as in like talk about these ideas. Of course, it's up to you to listen and to reflect on it, but to apply it into your own life, well, no one can do it for you. That's where, when the Buddha says, when it says in the Sutra, so Buddhas cannot take away your suffering, they cannot implant their understanding onto you. Well, that's really what it means, that no one can do it for you. You have to do it yourself. And that's where the Dharma is totally personal. It's a choice you have. You do it, you don't do it, it's up to you. But the more you do it, the happier you get. That's the good thing. Forget about enlightenment and nirvana. Well, if you can, don't forget about them totally, but that's kind of far ahead. But just to be able to go through every day, the more you bring this into your daily life, if you can make a point to think every hour, maybe put your handy, like not handy, that's the German word, put your mobile phone on a reminder every half an hour to generate bodhicitta, to generate, even if it's fake, okay, fake it until you make it. If you just think that thought, even though it requires an effort, still it changes your brain, it changes your mind, and therefore your brain, and it makes it easier to go through the day. So if you just do this every half an hour, 100% you'll have a happier day. If you remind yourself to just take a moment, generate compassion, or even greater, the mind to become enlightened for the welfare of all sentient beings. Allow yourself to feel a moment of compassion for others. And if you can do that half an hour every day, or even more or less, whatever you can bring, you'll have a happier day. 100% you become calmer, but you have to keep doing it. That's our problem. We do it for a few minutes, we do it once or twice, maybe after a retreat, we do it a few days, and then we forget. Of course, we attend teachings by His Holiness, we do it for a while, we'll forget. So we are used to, we have familiarized ourselves with daydreaming, planning ahead, worrying about the past, and so forth. Well, now it's a matter of familiarizing ourselves with, instead of daydreaming and worrying about this, etc., bringing in the Dharma. And yeah, that's the hardest part. I think that's the hardest part. It's a process. It takes time. And you just need to do it. That's it. But if you do it, you'll find you'll be happier. You'll find you can manage easier. You'll have more energy. And that's how it all starts. And bring in emptiness. however difficult it is, it's not easy. No one said it was. But if you managed to go through high school and possibly university, learned how to read and write, you know a lot more than most people did in India 2,500 years ago. I mean, you can use a computer. I mean, come on, you can use a mobile phone. You can use all these difficult to, I mean, the 21st century life requires a lot more ability to be able to, yeah, to get through, to understand how to do things. Things were much easier in India 2,500 years ago. You didn't need all that knowledge. That complicated knowledge. It's a lot more abstract knowledge we need nowadays. And that abstract, this ability to think in an abstract way, to plan ahead, etc., in the way we do, I think that gives our mind the ability to understand emptiness in a more effective way. But we need to think about it again and again and again. There's no other way. Okay? Even if you don't have time to do retreat, etc., bring the retreat into your daily life. You're too busy? Bring the retreat into your daily life in such a way in which you reflect upon what you learn again and again and again. All right, and that's it. That's no other way. No one can do it for you. And that's the hardest part. That's the hardest bit. But that's true for anything. If you want to exercise, someone can show you how to exercise. They can show you a whole documentary of what change is going to take place in your body. You have to exercise. No one's going to do it for you. All right. And the same holds on for healthy food and keeping a healthy and clean, like hygiene. Well, what does the songs call it? Physical hygiene and so forth. Yes, and that's it. That's the Heart Sutra. Yeah. And like I said, whatever you've learned here, now it's up to you to bring it into your own life. And of course, I don't want to stop here. I've already mentioned, and it's not that I'm so eager to start with the text that I raced through this today. I didn't race through it. There really wasn't anything. I read different commentaries and I couldn't come up with anything more. And of course, it'd be nice to have some time for questions. It's already quite worrisome that you don't have any questions. So I'm thinking, oh, I must have done something wrong. You really don't understand anything because you have no questions. So, well, you're welcome to ask any question, maybe, if there really aren't any with regard to what we've done here. But no, I still want to make that time. And I want to start with Chandrakirti's text. If that's in your interest, I need to, of course, seek your approval, but might as well start with Chandrakirti's Entry into the Middle Way. There is a translation available by, I think it's by Thupten Jinpa, Geshe Thupten Jinpa. So that's definitely a good translation. It's been sent to me from different people. I kept it very secret because I was not supposed to pass it on. I got it from Geshe Damdo years ago, but he was like, don't give it to anyone. But now it's being sent around everywhere. So I think that part of the secrecy is out. It's gone. So I think I can just pass it on, and I will. And then there's also Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary that he translated into English. That's available. It's just a draft. You'll find slight errors in the writing, but who cares, as long as you get the meaning. So let's do it. Might as well do Chandrakirti studies. Chandrakirti's text, such an important text. I don't know about the meditation. I know a lot of you like to do meditation, and the argument is, well, otherwise we won't do it. But that's not a good reason. You can perfectly do it on your own. I mean, I'm basically just repeating what we did in class. So you could just repeat it yourself. I'm not doing any mystical meditation. And you can do all of this on your own. So since we have so little time, I'd rather make sure you understand what we've gone through, right? So let's see how it works. But maybe I'll give you a commitment that after we're done with this session, you make some notes and you meditate on it for at least 15 minutes on your own, right? Well, we can discuss it. Maybe I can discuss it with Leora at some point, or anyone else here who would like to comment. You could send me a message, what you prefer. In the end, of course, I do what you prefer me to do. But I feel it's so important to explain something and then you go over it and kind of make sure you understand, having your input to see that, yeah, your understanding is there, because what are you meditating on if you haven't fully understood? All right, but okay, so for next time anyway, let's start with the text. I'll make it available. I'll see whether I can get it off my phone, because it was sent to my phone. So to get it to you and email it to one of you and you can pass it on. But yeah, if that's in your interest, my suggestion would start next week. Okay, next week, same time. Okay, all right, great. Any questions so far?
I see we have one question from Ruti.
Yes, please go ahead, talk. Go ahead and unmute your microphone, Ruti.
Ruti Marom. Raise your hand.
Who's Ruti? You could also write it.
Okay, maybe not. So we have any questions? Anyone else?
Any of you? Yes.
Leora?
Geshe, could you maybe this session or maybe the beginning of next session say a few words about Chandrakirti and about the text before we...
Okay, so a little bit about the author himself and about the text. Okay, sure, I can definitely do that. I will do that. Please remind me, just to send me a reminder if you don't mind in the WhatsApp. But yes, I think I'll remember, but just to be sure, we'll do that. Okay. Anything further?
So we'll start on next Sunday?
Oh, yes. Yes, if that's okay with you guys. I wouldn't know what else to do next Sunday, so I might as well start. I mean, yeah. We're done with this text. Yeah.
Sure. Good.
Okay.
I wanted to ask something.
Yes, please.
About in the last years, after I already learned by heart the Heart Sutra,
yes.
I found out that there are about 5 different translations that I know of.
In English?
In English. Mm-hmm. The thing is that in certain places, you know, the first time I thought about it was when His Holiness was giving teaching on the Heart Sutra, and he was specifically pointing out the word also when he talks about the aggregates and the translation with the Chinese and so forth. Maybe it's possible that I take would you know, or which one are you using? Because if I can take out like the words or the sentences in the 5 translations, and you know.
Okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't use any of them because I use the Tibetan, so I don't know. Don't use a specific one. I have my own one in German because I had to, as part of the translation work I do, I had to prepare a German one, which I personally use. I
don't know German that good.
Yeah, well, yeah, I could send that to you. But anyway, no, better to have it in English. I guess Jeffrey Thupten Jimba's translation is probably not a bad choice. I'm not sure I always agree with him, but then it's always just so subjective. But it feels like he's always a good source. The ones that we use here, it's also all right. I just wouldn't translate some of the bits in the same way. But again, it's so subjective. Yeah, so, and everyone is going to have a different version. So maybe for now, choose the one that reflects your understanding of the Heart Sutra the most. And if I now say I'm going to put one thing together, it's going to take me forever because I got so much.
No.
Yeah. So, That's why
I thought maybe you were using one specifically. So
no,
okay,
no, I've not been in the situation to have to choose one.
go on.
Yeah, and even here, I just took the one that was.
I was given as an exercise to translate from the Tibetan to English, but I just started.
Oh, then okay, great. Well,
No. Only for my Tibetan. Okay, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. All right. Any other questions? No. Okay.
No, I think good.
Well, no worries about that. Chandrakirti is difficult enough. You'll have some questions. It's not an easy text. Yeah, it's definitely quite difficult.
Maybe we can finish this session earlier than usual.
Sure. Yes, I can do that. Absolutely. Well, we may just finish with a meditation. Should we do that? Okay. So as usual, we spend a few moments to just focus the mind to let go of any disruptive thought. So let's do today's meditation on how to apply whatever we've learned to our daily life. So now think of a difficult situation in your own personal life. A situation that you would describe as difficult, unbearable, or negative. Just take a moment to think of an example. Does that situation appear as truly terrible or as negative from its own side? Although it appears that way, remind yourself from its own side, it's neither positive nor negative. It's not a problem from its own side. It's merely labeled in relation to what we want and what we don't want. Without the things we want and we don't want, there couldn't be a problem. So it's only conventionally a problem. Which is why, depending on your attitude, conventionally it could also be a challenge. So see whether you could view a problematic situation as a challenge, knowing that in and of itself it does not exist as a problem. And then bring to mind a person who you have a hard time with. Whether it's someone close to you or someone you work with, or you just happen to meet every now and then. Try to bring to mind that person, but also the negative feeling you have towards that person. Just objectively watch your negative feeling without getting carried away by the emotion. And now remind yourself, just as there's no intrinsic I in your own case, there's no inherent self or soul when it comes to that annoying or difficult person. there's only a mind and a body. But no intrinsic self that can be found among a person's body as well as a person's consciousness. And the person's consciousness consists of so many different mental factors that come and go. With a mental continuum that's ever changing. As well as many different body parts that are never the same from moment to moment. So there's nothing truly annoying we can actually point at. Other than our misapprehension of reality that seems to suggest that this person is truly annoying. But since this person has a mind, this person is just like us in that they wish to be happy and do not want to suffer. Just like us, they have thoughts and ideas that cause them to act in a mistaken way and unknowingly cause them problems, worries, fears, and so forth. They're just like us, having the potential to become fully enlightened, to actualize the potential of their own mind. And become like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to become like the Buddha. So see whether you can replace your sense of annoyance with this person, sense of dislike, with the deep sense of affection and the wish, may this person be free from any kind of trouble, obstruction, limitation. May they be free from whatever is in the way to them experiencing lasting happiness. Try to really feel that from the depth of your heart. So those are just a few examples how to deal with difficult situations, difficult people by applying the Dharma. And now let's dedicate not just the positive potential we've accumulated today, but also since we started at the beginning, pretty much at the beginning of the Corona crisis, started these classes, these sessions on the Heart Sutra. So whatever positive potential we've accumulated together as a group, may that become a cause for our own mental development that will eventually end in our full enlightenment as a Buddha, for the welfare of all sentient beings. So in that way, let's dedicate whatever virtue we've accumulated to our own enlightenment. Not just for our own welfare, but for the welfare of each and every single being. So, with this in mind, let's do the prayer, the dedication prayer. Santideva's dedication prayer. Okay, great. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the hopeless find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all the medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power and the people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the misery of the world. Great. So I didn't finish earlier after all. Well, 2 minutes, maybe a minute earlier. if we finish right away. Okay, great. So we're done with the Heart Sutra. I really stretched it, but there was a lot in there, and yeah, I hope it wasn't too extensive. And anyway, we're done with it now, and we can start with a new subject, which we studied in great detail, but I've never taught it before, and I really look forward to doing it. So I'll send the material, and I'll see you again next week, next Sunday. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good
Thank you so
evening.
much,
Bye
Geshe.
bye. Everybody.
Thank you
Thank you, Geshe, so much.
so much. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your generosity and wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you for wanting so much to teach.
Dankeschön. Tschüss.